Calling all thrill seekers, you're in for a treat today. That's because we're gonna put together your ultimate thrill-seeking bucket list. So join me as we take a look at 15 of the most scary attractions from around the world. Number 15, the Devil's Pool. Located at the Victoria Falls on the Zambezi River, the Devil's Pool is one of the many rock pools that's formed from millennia of erosion near the mighty falls. The good news, or perhaps not if you're looking for a fright, is that this looks scarier than it actually is, and if you're a thrill seeker, then you're gonna love it. If you time your visit just right and the conditions are good, you'll be able to swim in it. It looks super dangerous, but we're told it's pretty safe and it's worth it for the photo opportunities. You'll also get a great view of the falls and feel the incredible natural power of the Zambezi River as it roars past you, falls 100 meters, and smashes into the rocks. The iconic falls are so powerful that they can carry over 500 million liters over the edge every minute. That's enough water to last over 6,500 people throughout their entire lifetimes. The only thing to bear in mind is that it's not exactly easy to get to. You're going to be in for a long walk and a long swim before you get there, but it's definitely worth it for the once-in-a-lifetime views that you're in for. Number 14, the Island of the Dolls. In contrast to the Devil's Pool, this one's scary in a creepy way, as opposed to a I might die kind of way. Nestled amongst the Xochimilco canals near Mexico City, the Isla de las Muñecas is exactly what it sounds like, an island that's filled with creepy old dolls. A lot of them are weather-worn, missing parts like hands and eyes, and they hang from the trees and the buildings like weird little overlords. The story goes that a little girl drowned near the island, and so the island's caretaker hung up her doll as a way of remembering her. For whatever reason, other people started adding their own dolls, and before long, the Island of the Dolls was born. According to local legend, the dolls are possessed by the spirit of the dead girl, and if you wander the island under the cover of darkness, you just might even hear them whispering to each other. Oh, and you might be interested to know that the caretaker, Julian Santana Barrera, died of a heart attack in 2001. Apparently, it was the same spot where the girl drowned. Number 13, Ruby Falls Haunted Cavern. You can tell why this one's scary from the name. Located 26 stories below ground, it's a heck of a descent just to get down there, and that's before the real fun even begins. Said to be one of the most haunted places in the state, Ruby Falls Haunted Cavern has also been turned into a terrifying tourist attraction full of monsters and mystery. If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you're going to want to take a look at their haunted journeys. Ruby Falls is also an area of stunning natural beauty. Its huge waterfalls span a total of 145 feet, and the cavern itself has no natural openings and so wasn't even available to visit until the 20th century. More recently, it's been declared to be an officially haunted location, with paranormal investigators identifying at least 5 different entities. These are said to include the cave's discoverer, Leo Lambert, as well as his wife Ruby, who the cavern is named after. There's also said to be the specter of a night watchman who fell down an elevator shaft in the 1970s. He announces his presence with the smell of sugar cookies, so keep your nose peeled. Number 12, Freakling Brothers, The Victim Experience. The Victim Experience is deliberately designed to be as horrifying as possible, and we'd have to say that they've done a pretty good job of it. As you can probably tell from the name, the goal here is to put you into the victim's shoes and allow you to experience what it's like to be under the control of a ruthless killer. You know it's going to be an experience that you won't forget thanks to its requirements, which call for you to be in decent physical and psychological shape, and to be at least 18 years of age. The experience itself is marketed as the most realistic, traumatic, and horrifying test of psychological fortitude that you can experience in the United States, and it does this by simulating your death. In fact, it's said to be so disturbing that as many as 70% of visitors get scared enough to use the safe word. Considering that you have to be kind of crazy to go in for this in the first place, that's a crazy high percentage. You can imagine how intense this thing must actually be. Number 11, Salem, Massachusetts. Salem, Massachusetts is famous around the world because of its witch trials. Taking place in 1692, the infamous trials led to 20 people being hanged for witchcraft. These days, Salem is a popular tourist spot for those who are interested in witches and witchiness, and even the police cars have a witchy logo on the side of them. There's even a local school called Witchcraft Heights, although I'm not quite sure what subjects are on their curriculum. Other local tourist attractions include the House of Seven Gables, Pioneer Village, the Salem Maritime National Historic Site, Salem Willows Park, and the Peabody Essex Museum. True, it's not as adrenaline-filled as some of the other attractions we've talked about, but there's something about Salem that will creep you out to the core. If history is your thing and you want to learn the true stories behind a bunch of the local legends, like the Hanging Judge and the Trial of Dorothy Talby, be sure to get yourself a local guide. They'll tell you everything that you won't find in the guidebooks. Number 10. China's Glass-Bottomed Bridge. This takes us straight back to tourist attractions that will scare your pants off, especially if you're scared of heights. Opened in 2016 in Zhangjiajie, China, this is the world's tallest glass-bottomed bridge, spanning a whopping 430 meters and with drops of nearly 1,000 feet into the valley below. It's definitely not one that you'd like to fall from. Not that there's much risk of that. In fact, back in 2016, they carried out a safety test in which a BBC journalist smacked a walkway with a sledgehammer while standing on it. Given that they're still working as a reporter, we can guess that it's a safe bet that they didn't die. The bridge cost an incredible $144 million to build, and at its furthest point, it's about 200 stories above the ground. There are photos out there that show it's surrounded by clouds, so yeah, maybe don't go across it if you ever get vertigo. Number 9. Death Road, Bolivia. You can tell a lot from this place by its name. Death Road is one of the most famous roads in the world, but it didn't earn its reputation by being easy to drive along. This single-lane road to the north of La Paz was responsible for around 300 deaths a year at its peak, largely because it didn't have railings or safety features. Called the Camino de los Yangas by the locals, Death Road stretches for over 40 miles, and the only reason it's no longer the world's most dangerous road is that a new road was built nearby, and so the sensible people take that one instead. Fewer people die on Death Road because fewer people choose to take it. The road itself is so dangerous because it winds through the jungle-covered mountains at heights of up to 4,600 meters. It has a bunch of sharp corners, with very little to stop you from slipping off the sides. As you can imagine, it's not a road that you're going to want to head along at any velocity, and yet it's still a major tourist attraction for thrill seekers from all over the world. Just avoid trying to go out in the rain, because that's when things get really scary. Number 8. Nagoro Village. Nagoro Village is a little bit like the Island of the Dolls, but if you were to pit the two of them against each other, we think this one would take the prize for being the creepiest. This Japanese village is a place where there are more dolls than people, and the dolls hit that sweet spot in the uncanny valley by being so realistic that they look like real people from a distance. Scattered throughout the village, the dolls are in the middle of all sorts of different pursuits, including fishing and learning in a classroom. But why are these creepy dolls all over the village in the first place? Well, the story goes that a little over 10 years ago, a village resident called Tsukimi Ayano came back to the village after spending some time in Osaka. During the intervening years, the population had dropped to almost a tenth of its former size, from 300 down to 35. And so, in an effort to stop it from feeling like a ghost town, Tsukimi decided to populate the village by making dolls out of straw. The reason they're so lifelike is that she's an artist and she's made so many of the things at this point that there are more dolls than there were real people when she first went to Osaka. Number 7. Step into the Void. With this one, we're heading back to a tourist experience that will get your adrenaline going and leaving you needing a change of underwear. We're talking about the Chamonix Skywalk, which is at the peak of France's Aiguille du Midi mountain. To get there in the first place, you need to take a 20-minute cable car journey up the mountain to reach the glass box that marks the starting point of the skywalk. From there, you'll be invited to step into the void, where you'll be able to see everything above, below, and around you. They don't call it the void for nothing. Located nearly 4,000 feet in the air, it's said to be the highest attraction in Europe. Don't worry though, because even though the attraction is pretty scary, especially if you're afraid of heights, you're in no danger. Each of the glass panels is over a centimeter thick, and they're made up of 3 layers of glass that are bound in metal. A lot of effort has gone into making sure that it won't fall apart while you're up there. Number 6. Door to Hell. You don't have to be religious to be terrified of this one, although we're sure that it helps. This insane national tourist attraction is a crater in the Turkmenistan desert that just so happens to be in the middle of a field of natural gas. Yeah, you can probably see where this is going. The gas has caught fire, leaving the crater looking like a red-hot pit of death that leads right into the pits of hell. The heat coming off this thing is so insane that it's impossible to go close to the crater without wearing a special suit. That does make it hard for scientists to carry out experiments and investigations, which is one of the reasons why we're still not sure exactly how the fire started. The good news is that it's open to the public as a tourist attraction, and in fact it's arguably the biggest international draw for the relatively obscure and isolated country. It is definitely worth adding this one to your bucket list. Number 5. Paris Catacombs. The Paris Catacombs are one of the most notorious tourist attractions in the world, and they're a must-visit if you're not creeped out by death and you don't mind wandering around beneath the City of Lights while surrounded by the skeletal remains of over 6 million people. The catacombs themselves were created out of necessity because the city's cemeteries were starting to overflow. Remarkably, it seems as though the catacombs were then mostly forgotten about, at least until the 19th century. After that, the catacombs became a popular tourist attraction, being opened to the public in 1874 and earning a classification as one of the 14 City of Paris museums in 2013. Note that it's not just something that you can wander into though, and even if you could, we'd advise against it. There are plenty of stories about urban explorers who got lost down there and were never seen again. You'll know that you've reached the catacombs when you see the alarming sign above the entrance. It says, "Arrête, c'est ici l'Empire de la Mort." This translates into English as, "Stop, this is the Empire of Death." Number 4. Dracula's Castle. If you're any serious fan of horror, then the name Dracula's Castle probably immediately creates a picture in your head. And this impressive tourist attraction basically looks exactly like you'd imagine. Located in Transylvania, well, where else would it be? Bran Castle is widely held to be the inspiration behind Bram Stoker's Gothic masterpiece, and it's a must-visit location for anyone with a serious interest in vampires and vampiricism. In today's world, Transylvania is part of Romania, and Dracula's Castle is easily one of the country's most iconic tourist attractions. The real-life inspiration for the vampire himself was Vlad the Impaler, a Wallachian ruler who's believed to be one of the most bloodthirsty rulers to have ever existed. Bran Castle pretty much looks exactly like Stoker described it. Located in the middle of the Carpathian forests on the top of a hill, it is so beautiful that it's fit for a queen, literally. Queen Marie of Romania used to use it as her royal residence. But unless you're terrified of European monarchs, which is reasonable enough, you'll get most of the chills from the idea that it might have once been home to the world's most famous vampire. Number 3. Hashima Island, Japan. Well, we're heading back to Japan again. Hashima Island was once home to a busy coal mine, but with coal going somewhat out of fashion in recent years, it's no longer active, meaning that the island itself has turned into a water-based ghost town. According to the legends, the island is now inhabited by a number of lost souls and cursed spirits. It's said that you can hear them wailing and whispering to each other when you're walking around the island. Its official name is Hashima Island, although the Japanese just call it Hashima because Shima is a suffix for island. It's also called Gunkanjima, which means Battleship Island, and you can find it just outside of Nagasaki. There's a lot of history to the place, and we'd be here all day if we covered everything. As you might expect for a haunted and abandoned island, there's a whole heap of tragic history behind it, including the fact that it was the site of forced labor during the Second World War. This place is pretty grim. Number 2. Sedlec Ossuary. An ossuary is basically a place for bones, and so the Paris catacombs are basically a massive ossuary. The catacombs are creepy, but the Sedlec Ossuary is both creepy and beautiful. This Roman Catholic chapel is located in the Czech Republic, just under the cemetery Church of All Saints. It's not scary because it's a chapel, though. It's scary because it contains the skeletons of as many as 70,000 people. The bones are carved into all sorts of grim decorations, from chandeliers to coats of arms. In fact, the whole place is based on bones, which is why it attracts over 200,000 morbid visitors every year. And even though it sounds kind of horrific, it's also beautiful. That's why it was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site back in 1995. The ossuary's fame has spread so far that it's become part of popular culture, appearing in the Dungeons & Dragons movie, being featured in Ripley's Believe It or Not, and even influencing the Rob Zombie movie, House of a Thousand Corpses. Number 1. Mount Hua. Located in the Shanxi province of China, Huangshan is one of the 5 great mountains of China, and has long been the site of religious significance. With 5 peaks, it reaches a maximum height of 7,070 feet above sea level, and there are a number of temples and structures over its slopes that attract visitors. If you want to climb the mountain, you can, but you'll be in for a terrifying experience along what is often described as the most dangerous hike in the world. There are narrow pathways, a frightening walk along a steep cliff on wooden planks without safety harnesses, and unpredictable weather patterns that can reduce visibility and cover the area in water within just a few minutes' warning. With increased tourism to the area and reports of fatal accidents, authorities have worked to improve the overall safety of the hike. They have cut wider pathways, built stone staircases, and added railings on the most dangerous parts, but even so, you take your life into your own hands by beginning the ascent. Of course, if you want to see what there is at the top and don't want to take such a risk, you could just travel up by cable car instead. Watch our scary playlist for more top 15 videos about the most scary subjects. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best videos.